G'day, it's Dan here with part 2 of this year's Christmas challenge, in which we're building a functional rule set for Fantasy Grounds using the Ruleset Wizard, and our RPG system that we're working with is the White Lies Espionage and Spy RPG system by DwD Studios. Alright, so this is the PDF, and let's zoom in a little bit. And as I said before, it's quite nicely presented. It's really well laid out. We can see, let's have a look. Nice consistent formatting all the way through, a nice clear font, very easy to read, nice simple graphics, and they certainly fit the theme of the game. So I'm browsing through the RPG. Yeah, it's a big problem. Whenever I want to play a new RPG system, I'm going to spend days reading and learning all the rules and learning how the game plays, and I find that a big challenge for learning new game systems, but it's something you have to do if you want to learn how to program them. So what I do, it's a really important step for me, is I spend some time learning all the core mechanics, learning the character sheet, how it's all laid out, and how I think it's supposed to function. Now, I don't always get this right the first time round. I certainly spend quite a bit of time on it, and I do a first draft and I revise it, and often I'll put out a call for playtesters if it's not a game system I'm familiar with, or maybe not even playtesters, people I can bounce rule interpretations off. Hey, have I understood this properly? Is this how the mechanic works? And maybe I'll demo it for them and see how they think that my GUI, how the game responds in Fantasy Grounds, works appropriately for other people's experience with the game. So when I'm not using the Ruleset Wizard for coding Fantasy Grounds, if I'm doing an extension or working on some of my older stuff, I love to use Notepad++. It's another free utility. It's got heaps of power under the hood, and it's really lightweight, it's really skinny, and I can have 1,000 tabs open. And a couple of things that are really awesome for this is the Find in Files feature, where you can find the string that you're looking for in all the files in a particular subfolder, and you can also put filters on there. So to speed up the process, I only search for through XML and Lua files, for example, and that makes the process a whole lot quicker. So anyway, what I do is I've got my PDF and I start reading through it, and I just start taking notes. So we've got our attributes, got 6 attributes. Further on, it's not listed in the same spot in the rulebook, it's further down, but I find the table here. So when you've got a score of 3 or 4, you get a modifier of -2. When you've got a score of 14 or 16, you get a modifier of +1. Those things matter, they matter a lot. The first dice mechanic, we get an action check. Roll a d6 normally. 4+ is a success. Sometimes the difficulty will be higher, sometimes higher than 6. So I need to learn how, start thinking about how I'm going to build a GUI that supports this mechanic and does it in some sort of logical fashion. You see, then I've moved on to saving throws, gear. This is your starting gear. Some of this stuff, the layout makes sense to me, might not make sense to somebody else reading it. It's okay, this is never going to be seen by anyone other than me, but I'm sort of getting notes, understanding the things that are going to have to go on the character sheet. Hit points, 1d6 plus con modifier, and then a particular class, the Eliminators, they get an extra +1. So how does that work? How am I going to accommodate that? Is that going to be automated, or am I going to leave that up to the players to add that in? All sorts of design questions that I'm thinking about, not necessarily answering at this point in time. Armor class, this system has this game in the rules, there are 2 options. Descending armor class, like original old school D&D, or ascending armor class, which is just makes more sense to most people. And of course, it makes more sense to me, so I've chosen to go with the ascending armor class version here. So armor class starts at 10, you add dex modifiers and armor if you're wearing any. English, so you start, languages, you start with English, plus you also get additional languages for each point above 10. So just noting that down, working out how I might display that. Movement, it's going to be pretty static, pretty simple. Combat, we've got a mechanic that uses the base hit bonus. Melee attacks get a strength modifier applied, ranged attacks get dex modifier applied. Okay, so again, thinking how I'm going to implement the attacks. Are they going to be you attack using your weapon? Do you attack using a skill? If I'm attacking using a weapon, it needs to know which attribute this weapon uses. Is it a ranged weapon? Is it a melee weapon? Is it something else? Damage. So damage for melee weapons, it gets a strength modifier. So again, is this a melee weapon when you're rolling the damage on there? Then onto the classes. So this is another area where you can do a lot of automation. You can do a little bit of automation. You can do no automation. So I'm thinking about what I might be thinking about here. Fortunately, there's not huge amounts here. You've got an interesting hit point mechanic where you re-roll your hit points, all your hit dice, every level, but you only take the new result if it's higher than the previous result. So you're a level 2 character, you've rolled 2d6, then you might have +2 for your con. When you get to level 3, if your character says it now gets 3d6, you roll the 3d6. If that 3d6 +2 or +3 that it might be now is not higher than the 2d6 +2 that you rolled previously, well, you discard the roll. You just keep your previous hit points. So it's a quirk. Saving throws. Some classes have adjustments to saving throws based on their levels and to specific saving throws. How am I going to support that? Combat training, weapon proficiencies. Okay, so each class, it looks like they have a bunch of weapons that they're proficient in. I don't yet know what proficiency means for this rule set. I haven't gotten down to that part of the mechanics, but I'm noting it down because it's going to be relevant. Skills, skill training, adjustments, and each class seems to have a special feature or a special skill or attribute, and it seems to, from what I've read so far, it kicks in at levels 1, at levels 4, at level 7. So how am I going to support that code-wise? Some base, these are the stats that they list in the weapons, right? But you can see here that they haven't listed whether it's melee or ranged, because they've broken up into the table. They've got a firearms table, and then they've got a hand-to-hand combat table. So I'm probably going to, all my weapons are going to go into one field. So I'm going to have to also add in attribute or ranged or type. I'll probably add in type, and it'll be ranged or melee, and it will probably code that ranged means use dexterity and melee means use strength. So working through those things. So this is a work in progress sheet. I'm going to expand on this. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to just wipe some parts out and rewrite them, and keep adding to this. And this will be useful as I go along. So this is part of my process for how I get going in writing up this stuff. Thanks very much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.